Welcome back, race fans. This is the Crank Brothers Race Review series where myself and some selected co-hosts will break down each and every World Cup DH race this season. Crank Brothers is synonymous with the DH racing circuit. Last year, celebrating an incredible 14 years in a row of Elite World Champ wins with that mallet DH pedal. Now, they also won the 2024 World Cup overall title on the pedals. And it's not just pedals. Crank Brothers has been adding to their product offering over the last few years. And now a whole host of race winners and podium contenders are in their shoes. Riders like Ronan Dunn, Andy Cole, Bernard Kerr, Ocean O'Callaghan, Lucas Shaw, Cammy Belange, Troy Brosnan, and Benoit Coulange, plus many more. And in other exciting news, Commensal Makov will be running the Crank Brothers wheels this season. Now, I'm personally blown away by the shoes and pedal combo. I am a Boa Mallet shoe guy myself. It is easy the best shoe I have ridden. And this week, I'm excited. We've got Alan Milway, who I was privy enough to have him coach myself, and he's a coach to many a top star and also the manager of Norco Race Division. I almost call it Norco Factory Racing, but it's Race Division. That's awesome. And what I want to ask you about later is your Milway Performance, the products you've got in the gym and other things. I know you've snuck a few of them out to the race side, so we're going to get to those. But we are breaking down Leogang, and how awesome to have Alan here. Well, Gracie did it 2 for 2 or 2 in a row, however you want to talk about it. You can't tell me. I mean, I understand there's goals and you aim for the top, but coming into the year, I mean, was that consciously a goal? Like, let's go win these races?
Well, I don't know if I'm honest. I thought that she should be top three. I thought we were trying to get her on the podium. That was a big goal. And in Portugal at the test event, it was clear that she was in that position. But when we saw her riding and building that confidence at Poland, I thought, oh, here we go. She's looking really good here. So it's just momentum, isn't it? And confidence. And when that starts to pick up and she's got belief in herself and the bike and the team, there's a lot of people around her, and she's not necessarily the girl that leans into that sort of stuff. So you get a comfortable Gracie and a happy Gracie, and you've got a very dangerous Gracie.
No, clearly that. She was dangerous down the bottom, that's for sure. But also, you could argue there's some weaknesses on these last two tracks, but you just rode straight around them with sheer talent, determination. And I didn't mean in disrespect for like aiming to win. Like, of course, you want to win races, and that's why every athlete's there. But I think, like you say, there's building blocks of like, okay, last year got her on the podium, cool. She had some races where she could have done well, but she didn't. So she's got lots to learn. She's so young. And as we know, there's maybe physically she needs to develop maybe on the pedaling and carrying speed. She's one of the lighter ladies out there. So, when she went and did that at Ludenville, I was like, wow, that must have almost come as a surprise, maybe so early in the year. Maybe you would have thought you'd see podiums first and then a second and be like, okay, Gracie, you have to convince her, let's go do this. But she's there all smiles in the leader's jersey. I just love how carefree she is. What's she like, and what was it like going up for finals, considering she was the only Norco racer, in the elite field? The men's have not had the season they want just yet. Let's put it bluntly.
For sure. Yeah, I think starting with the first question about how she was going up in finals, she was more nervous because I think she felt an expectation because she knew her pace. We'd seen in Q1, the first qualifying session, that, well, actually, to be honest, we saw it in the first practice. The first practice session of Leogang, the track is sort of a tale of two halves. So the top half of the track, I guess you can split it into thirds, but the top half's very open. You've got the motorway section that they modified. I don't think they did a great job of modifying it. They took out some tabletops and put in some sort of pump track rollers. And then it came into the woods on, it used to be ruts, and this time it was just bike park, sort of almost asphalt, and you come into the woods and then things start getting chunky and technical and steppy. And I just had a smile on my face all through that all through that first practice. And I rolled back to the pits and I said to Gracie, I said, honestly, I've been doing this a while, and that takes me back to Rachel Atherton days. The level at which she was at compared to the pace of the others. And this is no disrespect to the other girls because they had their pace on other parts of the track. But to go, you know, being trackside with Rachel and helping her all those years, she just had this sort of flow about her and this rhythm and this speed. And I started to actually do some comparisons with some of the junior men to sort of show her, look, you're right on here. So we could see that the pace was there. And then in Q2, in the finals, she had some work to do at the top. That was the big thing. She knew that top half, we needed to get her to the woods within a couple of seconds of the leader, and then she'd do what she does. And we'd worked really hard to work out where she was maybe losing a bit of time and where to focus. So going up in the lift, she was kind of confident but nervous. And I saw just before she dropped in, it was only like 4 minutes to go. She wanted to sort of punch my hands and she didn't feel great. And I was like, look, don't worry about that. Just get on your bike, have a little pedal around, get yourself back into it, because I could see she was getting a bit anxious. And fortunately, as soon as she got on her bike, she sort of locked in, rolled up to the start gate, and we were like, right, she'll just go and do her thing now. And like you see from the GoPros and the footage, it was absolutely phenomenal.
No, it totally was, and that wood section, just seeing her, just like you say, hop and backside, very light, very looks like Jackson a little bit as
Yeah.
well, and got that Canadian flair. And then just before that Red Bull step down coming out of the woods, I mean, did you notice that, like, that commitment and pull she did out of one of, like, the last turn? She almost like tripled out. It was just
Oh,
visually different to what the other ladies were able to do. And obviously, Anna was close. Like you say, they've got strengths in other ways. Valley coming back to form. So we've got lots to unpack. But she's just
yeah.
riding on this, like, it just seems like air of confidence, momentum.
Oh, funny you should pick up on that corner before that Red Bull jump, because I actually felt as though she should be on a different line, and we were talking about the pros and cons and the importance, if she was on that line, to really try and get a backside on the way out to sort of boost you out. And because of kind of how the practice had worked and where we were at, it wasn't really worth trying to change. Do you see what I mean? It was one of these lines. The track, as you know, develops, and it was only after Q2, so the day before, did a couple of lines come out in the woods, and we weren't really worried so much about them because we knew that Gracie's time would be taken. She needed to get to those woods, so we worked a lot harder on the top half of the track. And really, it was dealer's choice for a couple of those things. And I said, look, what do you want to do? Do you want to move lines, or are you happy where you are? Because I think this inside line's a bit quicker and it's less bumpy. But she was like, no, I'll just hit that as hard as I can and carry my speed out. And obviously that's what she did. So her execution was fantastic.
No, it was to win races clearly at this level. You have to execute, and that's awesome to hear the insight into your guys' strategy of a race run. You might just tune in and think, okay, Gracie's going to do well in the woods, but you guys really strategized that race. You were aware of some glaring weaknesses on track, and that's how you do win these races. Maybe we should break down the track a little bit. Alan, what do you think? We've been going there for years. I've been there many times,
Yeah.
not as of late, but it's developed a lot since, like, obviously Danny and I were in Giant. I mean, there were sections at Leogang where we were having to puzzle, be like, it's not a consistent to go over this line. This line you could honestly crash. I'm not saying it's an easy track because it's difficult to go fast. It's a different skill set, like having to just, death grip. But part of me, like you said, there's like gravel going into the woods now. Like, that's less technical. The motorway every year has got more gravelly and less technical. There's less lines at the top. Like, have we gone a little bit far here? Like, what's the general consensus? Is it a bit quick? Is it a bit one line? And then you're only asking one question of the riders, and that's let go of the brakes.
Well, you're going to start me on a rant. You're going to start me on a rant. I'm sort of, I love the venue of Leogang, and I turn up and I'm like, oh, we're doing the same thing again, but maybe with less technicality, because we know exactly where we're going for the most part. Um, they they put they've turned the top half into just basically gravel. It's not, it doesn't cut up. They had a really weird thing out of split one. I don't think you've even seen it on the cameras because they had a drone shot for this, but they shoot out of a tunnel And up to that point, you've had a couple of off cambers on the grass that, if it was soaking wet, would have cut up, but didn't. And they shoot out this tunnel. And normally you would shoot out the tunnel and jump into a berm, a big berm, and it rails left. What they did is they made you shoot right just onto a grass piste, like no feature, just like a cow pasture, and then jump into a berm at the bottom. And there was such an opportunity to put a turn in there and make a chicane in there and slow the speed down, but it just got faster and faster and faster. And the when you come in now, the entry into the first sort of stumps, they changed the entry into it a little bit, but it didn't change the line. It was the same line that we do all the time. And then going into the second stumps, it was pretty much the same line we do all the time. You're over the jumps again on the motorway, and like I referenced earlier, you come out of this other tunnel, and there used to be some tabletops there, but they've taken them out and put, literally they were like pump track rollers, and you could have a different rhythm. You could sort of roll manual double, or roll double out. There was a couple of different options there. And when you went into the woods after that sort of gravelly right hander, there was this option for an inside line, but they didn't put a single corner in. So if you'd slowed up on that bridge as you enter the woods, cut left, you could have just straight lined all the way down to this bridge. And to be honest, that was pretty scary, the thought of the speed that they'd build. So in the riders' meeting, the riders basically said they thought this was just too fast. It's just too fast and too dangerous. And people suggested a couple of modifications to that line. And the organisation, from my understanding, because I wasn't in the meeting, pretty much pushed back and said, no, it's fine. If you don't want that line, we'll just take that line out. So they just completely kind of taped off, as it was, posted off that inside line. So everyone had to go into the bike park kind of berm at the bottom. And to me, it's a bit of a shame, really. They'd redone the steep section. There's a steep right-hander where you can go high and inside or low and outside. And what happens traditionally is everyone goes low until the end of the second practice day, when the absolute life has been ridden out of the bottom section and the tree stumps are coming out of it, and then they have to go high. But the way they built the track up, it preserved the lines, really. I feel as though that when I watched the men's race, I felt as though you couldn't differentiate between what the riders were doing. It was really hard to show how good these guys in this instance were, because I'm referencing the men's race, and the times were so tight. And I think in a way it was potentially an anticlimax because the wind was playing such a role. I think there was a really good tailwind on the top half, and then when that tailwind sort of died off, no one was able to get to the woods with a good crack at it. And I think that was sort of my take on it. And that's not, goodness me, it's not taking anything away Jackson. I think Jackson would have won it regardless. But I felt as though Jackson probably had the opportunity to win it by more if it was more technical. And I think we, as spectators, would love to see those stumps. I think if you slow it down and you show the riders moving around on the bike and you show the suspension working, you really get an idea of how difficult it is. But if you've got this panning shot of a rider coming past you on a bike park turn, what's the technical element to that? What's the sort of awe? Everyone just thinks, well, I could do that. It's just he's doing it faster. And I'm not sure to me whether that's the thing that sparks my fascination in downhill. It's not that I can do it, but you can do it faster. It's like, wow, you've done that. I'm not sure whether I'm able to do that bit. So yeah, that's sort of my take on the track.
It's you share my sentiments. It's obviously progressed and morphed into being used a bit more bike parking, and they bring gravel in because it does, do better with the weather. Like the first time they did the wood section in 2020, you could argue we needed a bit more gravel then. It didn't hold up enough. And obviously we saw, riders like Reese excel, like, yes, but you wanted a little bit more consistent. I would say some middle ground, like eventually a track gets a bit tired. That's like the old bottom woods of Leogang eventually got a bit tired. Then they put a new one in. So yeah, I'm also saying, like, as devil's advocate, I think the broadcast will be more exciting. There's a lot of byproduct things that will be better. And the racers seem to want a little bit more technical, a little bit more to differentiate you, considering we're doing this top 30 and times are so tight.
Yeah.
But you're right. I was like, it's so hard to spot the difference. Like, it's so exciting when it's like, wow, look at that line, or how did he get up there? Like those are cool things for commentators to notice and ride it, and the fans at home. Now you're just like watching Henry Kiefer's run
Ooh.
versus Loic's. I'm like, I don't know
This
where
is
was the
it.
time made. Like I can't really see. Like Jackson has a
Exactly.
different style, so like that's exciting. Like he's hopping more than others, so that differentiates me. That's cool. But like you say, if I'm just watching the same sort of thing on the motorway, the same sort of thing, even in the woods, it's like if you're
Yeah.
almost going at maximum speed, 45k an hour, a little bit faster doesn't really look that fast. But if you're really slow and some guys really attacking, you can like visually see who's going to be up at the split.
Mm.
So I do
Yeah.
share your side on that, and I appreciate you bringing up the wind. I mean, I went and looked. Of the top 10 of Q1, we only had 3 that managed to stay in the top 10 come finals. We also
Mm.
could put Ben Coulange as a question mark. He was 4th at the last split before he crashed. Right, so that's maybe 4. That's really unheard of. 2 things. Definitely the win. Like I watched Loic's run, and then I compared it to Amory, and I compared it, and Jackson. I compared it to who else was at the end? Loris. And there was not only like a windsock that was almost lying down, it almost looked like it was going the wrong direction. So to me, it's like the
Yeah.
wind died, and I'm not taking away anything from anyone in the top 30. I'd never do that. Like you say, it can still be Jackson's to win, but you would have maybe had more of those top 10 guys in there. And then do you think that other thing we mentioned in the preview, getting more reps at speed, like forced reps in Q2,
Hey,
there's that.
exactly that.
But what
Yeah.
I think also happened is like you've got the wind is one aspect. Like even Loic says, I don't know what happened. I had to tell Amory Loris, like, dude, there's no ways that was like your result with what
Yeah.
your run looked like. But if you look where these guys came from, if you qualify 11th or 14th in Q1, you've done a job. But I think it lights a fire in your ass, and you go up the next morning and you're like, I'm a little off pace. I need to go like crazy here. And if you get that combination right of fire up your ass and aggressiveness in your finals, you often jump up the leaderboard versus someone that's qualified fastest. How much faster do you push? How much subconsciously do you allow yourself to push?
You've hit the nail on the head for me because Q1, the people that didn't go through on Q1, such as Andy Kolb, such as Oshin, for example, those 2 boys came out in Q2, and Colby put down the fastest time of the day in Q2. So he comes out and he's like, right, clearly need to step up. He has that Q2 time, and he knows, therefore, right, it's going to get faster again. And the thing is that those extra reps, by race day, the times are getting quicker and quicker. And what I thought was really interesting was one of the boys that didn't get through Q2 was really, really happy with his time. He was like, you know what? Fair play. I put in a pretty good time here. I did a 3:07. Okay. So 3:07, legit time, just outside qualifying. Gracie's race run was a 3:11.
Oh my
Now
goodness.
just let that sink in for a second. So, okay, she's got some more reps under her belt. Okay, the boys then stepped up into the the 50s. But come on, just think about how quick Gracie is going compared to, if you're a lad, you're coming down, you're missing qualifying, but going, you know what? There's no disrespect in an '07. And then a day later, Gracie's doing an 11. You're like, jeepers, that's wild, isn't it?
Yeah, Leogang brings that out and has for years, right? With the motorway section, like it's so simple. It brings more people into the conversation. Like if you say that downhill in 2025 has crazy depth, both female and male, and then you make a track that's easier to ride, thus more people are going to probably go closer to the average speed. That's what happens. And then you got
Yeah.
juniors that have come up, like Kiefer, like he's now finding his feet. So it's
Yeah,
a
that was
recipe
cool.
for
I
that.
felt,
Yeah.
yeah. And one thing to say on the motorway as well, I don't want to be negative, but there was a section on the motorway that I think Loic brought up in the riders' meeting to say every time he lands this sort of it's like a kind of compression that sends you down, he feels as though he's getting bucked. And they didn't make any change to that. It was sort of just noted, but whatever. And Ponvian had a huge crash there, and I think someone else had a huge crash there as well. And it was horrible. I don't know if you've seen the footage, but he gets bounced into the trees, and then they eventually made a modification to the track. But in my mind, it was like bolting the stable door after the horse has gone. It's like you should have done this before. But again, it's indicative of the speed they're going. Do we need that absolute top speed where there's not that much going on? And I know we were trying to say, well, the more stuff they put on this motorway, the more it keeps you in the present. Back in the day when it was maybe just tucking, your mind sort of wanders and you start to kind of not stay in the present. And they were coming into the wall ride at absolute warp speed. You'll have seen the images and videos of Jackson just jump into the moon, landing right at the top of it, and then poor Nina who jumps in and just gets spat out the top. And there, unfortunately, some of the consequences alongside, I believe, 6 concussions from that weekend. And I do wonder whether that is the very high speed. That's some of the negatives towards that.
I think it's a very fair byproduct of going so fast and asking these questions of the race, and then you throw in the tailwind. I mean, we must remember, like, if you do a practice run and you're no braking a section, and then there's a tailwind, it's impossible to guess like how much to brake or how not. And I was victim at like Darkfest. I mean, it was 100% downdraft down a valley. It was the 20th time I did a jump at high speed. And I'm just referencing that. It's like, it's so easy to happen. Where you're like, okay, it's one tap of brake here, and then I'm not going to overshoot this jump, and then I won't get bucked on the next one. Okay, well, you can't guess how much tailwind you've got this run. And that's why the margin for errors are so small. So I think, like, obviously we've got hindsight as a perfect science. But I do think that's something to be like, should we look at how many concussions we've had? Okay, there is a potential tailwind. Rather build in that level of safety. Even if you slow it down, times go a little bit faster. You got to figure that out a little bit longer. But worst case, you're just bringing more fit riders into the conversation. Like, if it's a bit slower, then you've got to work harder to maintain speed. You never want to be breaking into a jump. You never want to be second guessing that. You'd rather be like trying to make speed, which, I think it's a fair thing. Guys, let's slow it down just a little bit.
It was good points you make about those jumps. And if you watch Gracie's run, you'll see as they come out the stump section, there's 2 big tabletops and they've got wooden kickers. And the wind made all the difference as to whether should you do the wooden kicker and either bounce. The girls were sort of doing wooden kicker on the first one and kind of landing on the tabletop and then bouncing off it, or they weren't doing the wooden kicker and getting a downside. And then the next one, do you do the kicker or try and get a downside? And Gracie was questioning that. That was one of the things we were going through at the top because the wind had really picked up. And, we were trying to work out what the best option was. And in practice, sometimes she would hit the kicker and come up really short. Sometimes she wouldn't hit the kicker and get a perfect downside. And then on her race run, you'll see the second jump, she doesn't hit the kicker. And she just sort of, like, I see her knees pulling back and the bike starts to go and I'm like, oh my God, she's overjumped this by miles. And she just catches the bottom. But that's the wind. It's like, next time in hindsight, you'd hit the kicker and been perfect.
Yeah, no, it was. But so that women's field, I mean, the racing was close. Obviously, we're so lucky to have you give us the inside info, like, of the race winner and what she was feeling at the top and the nerves. And talking about Anna Newkirk, it just also seems like a rider, like, she barely believes she should be up there still. I mean, it's so incredible. She almost won the thing. And then maybe lead into Valley. I think she'll be satisfied but not happy. Like, she's just not got the start to the season. I think she's been caught off guard a little bit. There's also some personal things she's going through. She's mentioned there's lots of things she's going through for the first time. So she's growing up. Things are happening around her personally and maybe team-wise. Speak to some of the other results.
I'd say Anna was was really cool to watch, and she built her speed more steadily. I felt as though Gracie got up to speed really fast, and then it was sort of maintaining that. And you felt as though Anna came on stronger as the weekend came on, and you could see in the splits. I was like, "Hey, Gracie, there's no sort of resting on your laurels here because the girls are going really fast." And I think Anna had probably a more her overall track speed was really, really good, and she was good in all sections. And Valley looked great at the top. Like I was watching Valley at the top, and I thought the way she works the bike, and I'd say one of Gracie's. It's funny with jumps, you've got the takeoff and you've got the landing. Okay, Gracie's really good at the takeoff bit. She's not that worried about pumping the landing because normally she just sends an absolute monster. So she's like, I'm fine. I'm just going to land it. But if you watch someone like Valley, Valley will really focus on carrying that speed out of the downslope and sort of using it as a propellant to send her forwards. And that was really interesting for me to compare those two in that respect, because I really like the way Valley rides a bike, and she really tries to accelerate out of turns all the time. And yeah, Anna just looked really smooth. And I'd say that I think Valley will be disappointed. Let's be honest. It's the home track. I was quite surprised. Again, call me biased, but I'd prepared Gracie. I said, look, I think you're after Ludenville, there's a press conference at every race. And I'd said to her, look, I think you're probably going to end up going to the press conference. So just be prepared, because she doesn't like media. She really doesn't enjoy the media stuff, and she gets anxious about interviews. And I try and push away a lot of that stuff. I make sure all the media stuff comes through me, and then I can filter it all out and work out the best thing for her. I'm like, look, I'll do the best for you, Gracie, and I'll take the brunt of it. Let them, be rude to me, and I'll protect you. And I was sort of saying, look, I think you're probably going to go to this press conference. And she wasn't invited. She wasn't invited to the press conference. She won Ludenville, wasn't invited. Valley was invited. And I was like, okay, they're going down the Austrian route, Andy Kolb and Valley, fair enough. But to me, that was potentially a bit of a snub. A girl who's won her first ever World Cup, you'd think that maybe they'd want to hear from her. But I'll bet my bottom dollar they want to hear from her when we go to Val d'Isole at that press
Are you
conference.
guys going to snub them and just not be available?
I might turn up late.
It might turn up late. You will wait for the current World Cup leader. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I was surprised. I'm not involved with any of that stuff, but I was just quite surprised. I was like, oh, okay. But I think what I'm saying is Valley was, the press and the media were going, look, this is Valley's home race. This is Valley's to win. And that, I think anything for her, anything but a win will be hard. And she was riding really well, but she didn't quite have the flow in the woods. You could just see she was just she just sort of not quite carrying that flow through some of those tight corners, because they are really tight corners, and they often would come down steps. So imagine riding down some steps into a turn, and if your bike's sort of not balanced very well, or too soft, or you're not able to get way over the front wheel, everything gets sent to the back wheel, and it just doesn't rebound. It just sort of stops you, and you could really see that. And that's one of the things we've actually kind of struggled with Danny's setup a little bit, to try and get that balance for him, because at the top of the track, when it was fast, he was right up there, Q1, Q2, Q1 he was in the top 10, and then he comes into this, and we're struggling to get that setup for him. And it's really hard because Danny rides the wheels off anything. And I think he was thinking, come on, I need, what's going on? And I was able to sort of show him, look, this is something we need to get better with. And we had a long meeting after Q2, and I think we found the area to really dig into, which is brilliant. Just to get that balance for him, because when you've got a bike that's so adjustable and there's so much to be made, you can make a bike that's incredible for one part of the track, but maybe there's compromises on another. And I think we need to come back from a bike that's absolutely blazing fast in certain areas to make it more rounded for him, really.
That's interesting, and it is someone. I want to understand what's going on. That's so interesting. Hopefully for the listener, like, this is Danny Hart. Like, he normally can ride, like you say, the wheels off anything. But if you do set up a bike and you go down one route, you might compromise another. So you say maybe even in the woods where we'd expect him to excel, he's not quite himself
Exactly.
yet.
Yeah, and I really wanted to reassure him that I didn't want him to risk too much, because I knew that he he still probably wouldn't get where he wanted to get, where we were that day. And that's got to be, frustrating for him, because he's like, well, I'm the one riding the bike. I've just got to give it absolutely everything. And I believe, I don't want people to think, and I'm trying to reassure Danny, I'm like, look, you're Danny Hart. There's no problem there. You are one of the best bike riders in the world, and we're going to get you to that point. And I'm really looking forward to the podcast that you and me will do in a review show when Danny's right back up there, because he will get there. It's just a case of we've got a few tweaks to make. But at this level, when 2 seconds separate the top 30 as a percentage, that's such a small percentage. So if you're just a little jot off on something, there's just nowhere to hide. And that's the long and the short of it, really.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And there is just nowhere to hide. Like you say, if you're just a little bit off and then the conversation comes up like, okay, maybe there's a bike setup thing we can try or do. Now then you're focusing on that, and if you've not thinking about that and you're just thinking about the track, or Jackson's worried about what song he's going to mix at the after party, you're probably a little bit more casual. I know that's his style, but yeah, it's just ruthless at the top with the top 30. We're going to beat the dead horse. The top 30 is so ruthless. There's no room for any errors. So then that adds a bit of pressure. Then you're like, okay, well, we need to really make sure the bike setup's good. Let's change that. Let's go after this, setup. Remember you joked, hey, when we go to top 30, we're going to have guys talking about motocross and not making the main and this issue. And now we're talking about bike setup things in mountain biking and downhill. We never used to as much, because there was more room to make a mistake. And just, like this would have probably been a 14th place for Danny back in the day. Yeah. And it doesn't hurt your confidence as much, even though the time he would have been further back in time from the win. But it doesn't hurt your confidence as much. There
you go. Exactly. And this is where you're also asking a rider to absolutely risk everything. And it's how fast can you ride something that is, for them, not that difficult. It's where you draw the line with the track. But what's been interesting, and again, it would be good to get Joe's take on this, but I think Joe Breeden's been one of these sort of highlights of this year in terms of how he's come through. And on that bike, he's got the gearbox bike that is going to take a lot setting up. That was a new prototype. I think I don't think he got it until after the IXS Cup. So the IXS Cup at Fort William, I think he tested the week after. And with the way Joe's running this team, he's got so much on his plate that Joe's one of the kind of eternal overthinkers in my mind. He goes down, he really tries to think of everything. But I almost wonder that he's that busy sorting the team out. He's got that many plates spinning, being a team owner, team manager. Maybe the riding the bike is the thing he's not thinking about. So he just gets on it and rides the wheels off it. He lets he's worrying about other people. And maybe that's what we're seeing with Joe, is his natural sort of, is a slightly more carefree attitude potentially is coming to the fore, where instead of locking in and trying to be perfect, he's actually going, well, let's just go for it.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I don't know how those guys do it between him and Bernard, but I'm very happy for Joe. What a great talent, and you don't really get a more likable guy. And I wish I had those bar ends to help with arm pump. They're clearly working for him because he's doing good enough at brutal tracks down the bottom, right? I need to go test that out. But that makes me think, like, do you then go with Danny and say, okay, let's just get you a more all-rounded bike? Because you could go down the Greg Minnaar puzzling route, which I think he needed. But maybe Danny's like, okay, let's just get you to a bike that'll kind of work everywhere, and then we'll just get you back to your raw ride the wheels off it style, right? Like, stop overthinking it.
Exactly that. So that's sort of that's the bike that he took away with him to Schladming. So we've worked on that, and he's gone to Schladming now. He's got a 510 thing, and there's a good crew. I know there's loads of guys out there this week.
That'll be good for him.
It'll be good for him. Ride with them. He's actually just phoned. I don't know whether it came up on the podcast, but that was Danny just phoning back then. He's so keen to do everything he can, and sometimes it's a case of, well, you know what, don't worry about how many runs that are done today, just go and just enjoy it and ride with others, because I think they learn from each other by sort of kind of osmosis. They're messing around together. Oh, he's done that, has he? Oh, okay, maybe I'll try this. And that's where, like you saw with Andy Kolb and Charlie Hatton when they're on Athertons together, they lift each other up. And sometimes Danny, as you will know, would want to almost take himself away from that environment and be on the stopwatch and be super focused. And there's definitely a time for that. But maybe this week before Val de Sol, actually having a smile on your face, doing some laps with, some other really high level World Cup races is going to do him the world of good.
I mean, that takes us back to Ludenville coming into that, Jackson riding with Amory. I mean, just think about that. And you do. I think everyone, people listening that are just riding and want to just improve a little bit, you just find that guy that's a little bit better than you and you ride behind him. Like, that's where probably most of my learnings were made, following Brendan down plenty or Danny down plenty on there were sections I excelled on. I could probably teach them a thing or two, and then vice versa in the steep. So yeah, happy riders a Foss rider, and in this day and age, I guess everyone's trying to focus that little bit more. And if you look too far to other tents or other riders and what they do, it might not work for you. It's so fascinating, we're learning after all these years, even a Danny Hart. And I think we're using him as a reference, but I think it's a key component of the season. There are guys that are having to learn the new format. Like, do you say the Q1 and Q2? Like, to me, it is a best of two runs now. We might have had a strategy coming in, but I don't know. I think now I'll be like, it's best of two. Go as hard as physically possible. If I crash in Q1, I got to go to Q2. Like, there's no point.
So this is something, funnily enough, with Lucas Cruz, we were having this conversation because Lucas is trying to build confidence after having a horribly broken leg. Let's be honest. You're coming back. You're trying to build speed. In practice, he rides fantastically well. He carries so much speed. He's a big, strong lad, and he did loads of riding with Greg in pre-season. And Greg was like, "Bloody hell, this kid flies." And we're just not quite seeing that yet in qualifying. And one of the things that I thought was fascinating when I was talking about it with Lucas was, in his mind, there's this little part of him that says, well, I'm not going to get through Q1, let's be honest, so I'm going to Q2. So he rolls back the throttle a little bit to save himself for Q2. And in my opinion, that's absolutely the wrong way to go about it, because you're almost wasting a run. So, he doesn't build that next plateau of speed that's needed to then slingshot him forward to Q2. And it's that we sort of said, look, it's got to be everything in Q1, because if, like you say, it's a Hail Mary in a way, it's either going to work or it's not going to work. And if you throw everything at it, you come in 30th, then hey, you're going to get another go at it. And I think that's what you saw with, like we said earlier, with Andy Kolb and O'Sheen and some of the others. They pushed on again, and that speed just gets faster. So I really like, I'll be honest with you, I think this is the best thing to come out of the racing so far, is this Q1, Q2. I think it's really exciting for the fan. I think it's nerve-wracking for the rider. I think it tells a simple story. And it's a do your best. You know what I mean? There's no protected riders. There's no sort of sandbagging. You've just got to go all in.
No, absolutely. And as a team manager and building teams and looking to the future, just maybe quickly, do you think 30's enough? Like there are a couple factory teams that are not you guys weren't fielding riders. Like, I understand it's like shit will get off the pot. Like, if you can't perform, cool. Maybe we've got to look at other options, but I'm just like, we've got a lot of riders not there. It's so nuanced. Times are tight. Laurie Greenland only just got into finals. Some other riders which we want to see in finals are not there. I don't know.
That's like, a shame. That is a shame.
Do we want more on finals day, but similar format? Like, I do love the format. I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but if you're not going to have protection, LCQ came up with it.
yeah, for sure. But no, absolutely.
Like, I don't know. Part of me, this topic just keeps coming back. Like, come on, guys, can we have 50 maybe? Like, you don't have to broadcast them, but give more people a shot at a final. Like, if you're wanting, what are there, 10 elite teams, then 5 more, then 8 wildcards. I forget the numbers. How does it work again?
Yeah,
is that about the numbers?
That's
So
about right.
say even if we're trying to get 15 plus, he's going to have some wild cards. We've got 20 teams. You're kind of forcing the teams to have two or three males. So that's already
Yeah,
way more than 30 riders if you were just trying to cut it
exactly.
down. So you like almost need 40 or 50 in the final.
Well, okay, so I'll tell you a little story. I won't mention the name because I don't know whether he'd be happy to mention his name or not. But this rider in Ludenville had a mechanical in Q1. He had a mechanical in Q2, didn't get through. He was absolutely raging, really frustrated. It's not on him. He had this mechanical happen twice. He's on a factory team. And chatting to him afterwards, he says, "Well, I'll tell you what, Al, just you wait until that happens to Loic, or that happens to Amory, or that happens to, Loris or Jackson, and then let's see what happens." Because I think if you were on specialized gravity and Finn and Loic have two mechanicals and then they're not in the final, all of a sudden you're like, whoa, bloody hell, we're not, what do we do on Sunday? What goes on here? And that's a really tough thing. And I think that really is the problem is as the teams are getting bigger, as the race series is growing, the budgets that are required to run this operation are massive. Okay, so they're getting really big. It's quite a stressful thing to think about the money involved to actually get all of these people. Some teams are 18 to 20 people. You think about the transport cost, the accommodation cost, the food cost, the logistics cost, all of that stuff. It's exponential from what it used to be. So you need someone to pay for that. Now, if you go to a sponsor and you say, hey, look what we do, once that sponsor starts digging into it, either they're just going to want the media and the marketing and the social media coverage from you. So they'll look at, right, what's my reach in this area? Or they're going to be on a performance basis, i.e., we're going to get on TV with some of the best riders in the world. The difficulty is with 30 and with no protection, etc., you have the potential. I think Trek went through it in Ludenville, not one person in the final. I think we've seen these factory teams where not one rider has made it through. And that's really tough. And I think because that is getting so tough, you've then got these problems of the Amory DQ controversy. The Henry Kiefer still got points where someone was jamming his bloody chain guard with an umbrella. You still got Finn, who wasn't uh, DNF because he went off the track or DQ'd. He still got points. These are the things that aren't consistent. And I think that will start to cause frustration, not from team to team, because we had a brilliant managers meeting at Leogang and sat down with all the managers and we're all on the same page, but we just want consistency, because if we're fighting over points and we're fighting to present our sponsors in the best light and get on TV, and then something happens that maybe forces your hand one way or the other and you can't compete, that's frustrating. At best that's frustrating. At worst it could cost you the opportunity of that sponsor sticking around.
Yeah, that's well said. I'm hearing like if you think of it as like a bigger ecosystem, and Warner Brothers is there, UCI, and you got all these teams, you got all this industry, and hopefully outside industry. We don't want to hop on that, but the potential negative effect is some teams don't have enough riders in enough finals, so they go, "Hey, but is it worth it? We want the TV. We
Yeah,
want to be there on finals day, let alone on TV. Like if we bring sponsors in and they rock up to Leogang on a Saturday afternoon and they're drinking beers in hospitality and they can't shout for Trek Factory Racing's two or three riders, even if they're having an off weekend, but they could like spark a good one in the final and they could have got like 25th, 25th in the world.
yeah,
But they got in
yeah.
because maybe they had a mechanical in Q1 and then you're allowing more and then they build pace. Danny Hart being one of them. Like, I don't know, I want to see what Danny can do. Maybe he can turn it around come finals. We didn't have that opportunity. So I'm just saying holistically, like if we're trying to have these elite teams, like you're saying, everyone's being more professional, spending more money, but you're throttling. It seems like some people are going to get throttled enough that you're going to lose teams potentially. It could be one of
I'd
the
agree.
things that happens, right?
It could be one of the
Yeah.
outcomes. And, if we're going to more races again next year, which is the talk, then we're going to need more money. It makes the calendar, more spread out. So all of these things come into play. And I think the good thing for me is the riders seem to communicate well with themselves. They seem to be a good group. The managers are a good group. We don't seem to have any outliers in that respect. And honestly, I think that's really cool. You know, it's nice to be able to chat with people and feel as though we're in it together. But there is no official, it's really hard to have that sort of as an official body. It's kind of like we're trying to present our case to the organization to say, look, we think this is the best for everyone. And the racing is something that we're also passionate about, and we want the riders to be excited by tracks. And I just wonder if Leogang stays exactly the same again next year, are the riders going to be excited about it? I remember talking to you previously when we were at Andorra a couple of years ago, and the riders were absolutely buzzing to ride that track. You know, and that's when you get the best out of them, when they're absolutely this huge smile on their face. They've been going through a fresh loamy turn. They've been going through some dusty loamy soil. It's all, you know, changing. They've got these little rhythms and lines they're doing. There's some good jumps for them to do, and that's exciting. And I think there's going to be some changes made to Val di Sole. I think they're taking the track down a slightly different route in parts, and that fills me with hope, because again, Val di Sole has been traditionally a very kind of very similar route down the hill. And although some people love it and it's the track they really love, you want it to be a safe track. And sometimes when you're at bedrock and you've got, you know, lots of sharp rocks chucked in there, it does make it a bit more of a unforgiving place to go over the bars.
Yeah, I mean, well said. That's the nuances of downhill. Like we want new sections, we want new track. That's exciting. It's exciting on the broadcast. It's something to talk about for the
Yeah,
riders, for the photographers, everyone. I would hope every year, like each track's forced to make a certain percentage new or revamped. You know, it is cool.
that's
Like
a good
obviously
shout.
it costs
Yeah,
money.
yeah,
All, you know, we've got to be honest. And I think the irony is everyone from each organization mostly wants the same thing. They're just going about it in a little different way. You know, like everyone wants exciting racing. Everyone wants TV ratings to go up. Everyone wants the sport to grow in inverted commas. Obviously, they have a different vision of how it grows. But like, we kind of all want the same thing. We just got to try. You are probably not eating enough fruit and vegetables, and you know it. And this is going to help. Good news for those of you thinking about using AG1 or those already using it. They have just released their next gen formula, which is more advanced, clinically backed version of the product. I've been drinking every single day for years. The same one scoop ritual now with an even more comprehensive formulation and 4 clinical trials behind it. AG1 has been a game changer for my mornings. It sets the tone for my day, helps me feel my best, and I genuinely look forward to it every day. AG1 Next Gen has been shown to help fill common nutrient gaps and support gut health, even in people who already eat well. In one study, it boosted health bacteria in the gut by 10 times. They've added more bioavailable nutrients, enhanced probiotics, and invested in real science, which is very rare in the supplement world. AG1 Next Gen is also NSF certified for sport, which means it's tested for over 280 banned substances and trusted by elite performance who can't afford to guess. Clinically backed with an advanced formula, this is the perfect time to try AG1's Next Gen if you haven't already. Plus, if you're still unsure, they have a 90-day money-back guarantee. You can buy it, try it for 3 months, and if you don't like it, they'll give you your money back for the entire lot. And right now, you can get a year's free supply of vitamin D3K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs, plus that 90-day money-back guarantee by going to the link in the description below or heading to drinkag1.com/moving the needle. That's drinkag1.com/moving the needle. As we start wrapping up, I want to be aware of your time. Like, what else stands out? Obviously, Jackson just riding on an air of confidence, momentum, rode around what you could argue is some weaknesses, and then excelled. He's just like a little bunny rabbit down the track compared to Loic, who
yeah.
you just couldn't argue he put any foot wrong on that run, really. And it was prettily close, 0.05. So there was
Oh,
that. Another
incredible.
standout is like we just didn't see the top 10 perform. And for sure, there was an outside influence. It seemed like wind, as well as maybe some people not qualifying as well or getting more reps from Q2, gave them an advantage. What else stood out for you?
I think the juniors, Ollie Clark winning the juniors to me was a big standout. He seems, I don't know the lad, but he just seems like such a raw kind of normal lad who just likes to ride his bike. Not he doesn't seem polished in any way, and that's a compliment. That's a huge compliment. The fact that he gets on the bike and he rides the wheels off this thing, first belted win. Although it's not elite, to beat the Alram for me to beat the Alram brothers and Asa, you are absolutely flying. Give that man a tip of the cap and a handshake, because his name isn't mentioned in those, at that level at the moment. And I think he'll walk out of there head held high, because that was an incredible time and an incredible bike ride.
Yeah, that man weighs 90 kilograms. I think he won the motorway. No surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a unit.
No,
but
the juniors are, like I said, I've said my bit about juniors and whether they must maybe bid a World Cup and resources, but I will never say that they can't ride the wheels of a bike. That is not what I've ever said. This is just uncanny how well they ride and how good they look doing it. And Alran just like very comfortable drifting down the bottom, and Sleeper Co put up a whip clip of all the juniors. You're just like, wow, what are they feeding these kids, man?
Oh,
they're
just
like
incredible.
Years ahead of what
they're
you
so
think.
exciting to watch. Yeah, they really are. And this sort of being one of the benefits of being associated with a factory team that are going to regular training camps anyway. You just bring the juniors along, and that's long-term athletic development that is starting to come through in downhill that's been missing for a long time, because I think a lot of juniors were just sort of there. You know what I mean? Have a bike, sit in the corner, clear up your shit, and we'll all get along fine. That we've moved on from those days a little bit now. So I love watching the juniors ride their bikes, just because they've got so much flair. They've got a carefree attitude, and it's talking about Ollie Clark and the MS team. I'd say that Tahuto is one that
there's Danny Hart again.
Yeah, Danny's phoning me again. Yeah, sorry about
that. Tell him I'm more important at the moment. I'll text him after this.
But I think Tahuto, he's had absolute blazing speed as well, and that bike clearly works. And it would be nice to see him lay down a complete run. I think that everyone wants that. He's such a nice lad, and you can imagine Tahuto riding with Ollie Clark, and that would be quite a spectacle.
Yeah, no, it will. I mean, we're just going to keep coming back. I mean, if you talk about the juniors going into elite, what's Commensal going to have 4-5 elite riders? I mean, minimum they might have to have 4. So that budget's gone up. Oh, wait. And that's 2 of the top 30 placings could be up. So we got to start seeing there's a lot of juniors, not just the 1 or 2 that can hang as they come into the elite. And then some take a little bit longer. Then 2-3 years later, you have a freaking Kiefer on the podium. It's just absolutely absurd. I'm so thankful brilliant. I'm talking to you from the sidelines and not having to race back in my days. But
I know.
It's good to see Lockie up there, old school podium in 4th.
Yes,
that's great.
Bring back the 5-man.
Like we know he's got the talent, we know he's got the speed, we know he'll excel on this track. So I definitely picked him in my fantasy. Laurie Greenett, I mean, it just shows you like get a happy rider, try get him relaxed, and whatever he did from Ludenville to here worked, which is nothing except attitude, right? He just
this is it.
Just had to get on with it.
I think that. Yeah, I think Laurie's one of those guys that I know he's had some health issues over the past year or so, and I think having him in a good place, and healthy, the guy rides a bike just incredibly well. His style sort of to me is quite similar to Jackson's. Yep. He moves the bike around a lot, and he's a really cool rider to watch. And I think something we should touch on is obviously having Ken Roxon come over.
I was like, shit. I was hoping you were going to drop that. You must have been. Yeah. Did you meet him? Did you super fan him?
You know what? No, I didn't. Unfortunately, I was absolutely flat out busy, as you can imagine, and he was getting some treatment with one of the physios I know really well at Red Bull, and I nearly just sort of went in there. But the guy was on the physio bed. What's he going to? That's
you've lost your chance, Alan.
Yeah, I know. But it
Just
was
super fan
what
him
was
with
cool.
his freaking top off. Can I have an autograph?
Yeah, can I have an autograph while he'd been treated for his injury? Yeah, it was cool that he was there. I think a lot of people. I know Gracie met him after, and we've got a really good relationship with Fox on, through Lena and through Greg, and Mikey, their head of marketing, was there, and he'd come over with Ken, and it sounds like he loves his downhill. And for me, that was really cool that he was in the commentary box. I thought it was really good of him to do that. He seemed to genuinely be interested in it all, and I know that Canyon partied hard. I think a couple of their staff members had birthdays, and Kiefer smashed it. I think Roxon's got a link with Canyon somewhere, and there was a bit of playing up to the cameras, trying to get him to sign a contract with
I
Gabe
saw
Fox
that.
for
I saw that.
26.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was brilliant. So I think that brought a bit of glamour and maybe a bit of validation to the
Yeah,
downhillers. Going, you know
validation's a
what, the
good word,
Supercross
Alan,
boys,
isn't it? Yeah.
you know what I
No,
mean?
because he
Come in to
said
see
he
us.
said there's like a lot of the top guys follow the sport, and obviously credit where credit's due. Like champions are going to respect champions. Like doesn't matter what the sport
Absolutely,
is. So
class is class.
if you have an
Yeah,
interest and you're riding road bike, for those pro motocrossers do enough road miles. A lot of
yeah.
them do mountain biking as well. They need to, some of them need to get out of lycra though on their trail bikes. I've seen that too much. It's weird.
That's a bit much, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah. Come on, guys.
It's
Well,
a
maybe
bit
Roxon
much.
will help make it cool because he's come to downhill to see what. Although we've gone the other way with the
What's what?
speed suit, so I actually contradict myself. I got asked today, did he stay in the commentary booth too long? Because he did like a lot. Like he kind of was meant to apparently only go in for a few riders or whatever. And I think the pre and the post show was great. And then Nico said he organized to sort of get him in there for a little bit, and then Nico would have gone back for the top 10, but then they kind of just left him in there.
I
And I think
see.
he's an
Yeah.
absolute pro that he stayed in his lane and he was really good. But you have a challenge when like Roxon's in the booth. You're obviously going to ask him stuff about motocross
Yeah.
similarities, and like
Yeah.
that's probably more pre and post show. So that I don't think it. I'm neither here nor there. Like I guess in hindsight, probably if you're talking to Roxon while Loic Bruni's coming down the hill, you rather want to commentate on a potential willing run. There's that challenge, but it's a net huge win, right? Just to have him there.
I, I think so. I think that it's a one-off, isn't it? You're not going to get Ken Roxon in the booth on a regular basis. So while he's there, I'd make the most of
Yeah.
it. I think if you're a casual fan on TNT Sports, like one of my neighbours watching it, they'd probably be like, "Who the hell's Ken Roxon?" I want to hear what Bruni's doing on his run, not about Southwick, whatever, or the Suzuki. But I'd say on the grand scheme of things, I thought it was awesome to have him in there. I thought he brought a lot to it. I thought it was great, super clever marketing by Fox to get him involved because they were releasing this new helmet over that weekend, the downhill helmet. So it all sort of came together really well. And I'd say that motocross is, it's a sort of sibling sport, and it's got some more money and it's got some more glamour. So I think we always look up to it as Big Brother a little bit. So to have one of the stars of the show there in Leogang was amazing. And yeah, we're lucky again with the weather. Like I woke up on Sunday morning and the rain was bouncing down. So that would have we were close to having storms on race day, but they just held off. And again, we should be grateful for that because there's nothing worse, is there, than practicing the dry and then it just pours with rain and you're like, oh, what do we do here?
Especially on that hard pack, slick
Yeah,
wood
stuff
glossed blue groove track.
Yeah.
It's horrendous.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so horrendous.
Oh,
But
no.
as we wrap up here, I think Thibaut Deprilla's been up there all the time. Max Hartenson as well. These guys are doing some good results. And then someone you didn't want to mention the name, but he was in 6th place. So
Oh, you have to mention his
Ronan
name. Ronan
Dunn.
Dunn. It's absolutely
yeah,
fine.
well, you didn't want to mention
Absolutely
the
fine.
rider that had 2 mechanicals. I'm like, there's only one rider that had 2 mechanicals.
There's only one.
And even if there were 80 riders in the field, he wasn't going to get down. Silly
I know,
silly
poor guy.
bugger freaking
Yeah, I
smashing
know.
on the same rock. That's so unlucky. But no, there's so many
It's
shout outs,
frustrating.
and that's the beauty of downhill, the nuances. You're just going to have top guys coming back into the mix. You're going to have guys that suit the track and, like you say, just Hail Mary Q1 and then they're in the finals and they get a bit of momentum, like Nathan Ponfion, that healing vibes to him, like horrible, horrible crash. Never want to see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nina as well. So, yeah, thanks so much, Alan. We're on a little bit more time constraint as usual. So if we miss someone, let us know in the comments or let us know what your highlights are. But what's up with Milway Performance? I see the Instagram and I see some of the stuff sneaking into the pits. What have you got brewing?
Yeah, it's really hard to get everything balanced because obviously, my main thing is coaching the athletes and working with Norco, but I really, having spent so long uh, kind of traveling gyms and working in gyms and working with athletes, you start to see what you like and what you don't like. And so it's been, for me, it's a really fun project. We've got the weights bench that is all made locally to me, and that's gone down really well. It's one of those where it's hard to get a market footing against these big, conglomerates or big Chinese companies that sell cheap. But it's when someone phones you and they say they've been recommended the bench or they've tried it in a gym and they've seen it and they want one. That to me is amazing. And with the rehab stuff I do with athletes, these slant boards to help you squat and help reduce knee pain and ankle pain, that just became the natural thing. I said, I've just got to make them, because most people just make them out of MDF and they just fall apart after a couple of months. So to have some welded up properly, like Red Bull have got them in the traveling physio at the races. We use them. We've still got the original prototype
What
in
one?
the Norco
Red
pits.
Bull's got Milway ones.
Yeah,
Sick.
I wanted. Yeah, exactly. So it's really nice that I know the physio boys, so maybe I've got an in there. But it's
Well,
nice
it's clearly
to see them being
quality stuff if
used.
they're willing to use it. But so
Yeah,
you were sort of
absolutely,
solving a need that you saw, like a need with your athletes, and like this product isn't good enough. Like, let me try figure it
exactly.
out.
Let me try and figure it out. And it's one of those that my I don't know. I don't understand my brain that well, but I'm not great. I sort of need one thing to fill it to make the other side relax. So to get away from the racing stress, I need something else to be stressed about. So I was onto a powder coat this morning. We've just had something powder coated and it didn't quite work the way we wanted it. So he's got to repowder coat it and I've got to pick it up tomorrow. So for me, that's really cool. I love being busy. I love seeing the athletes training with it and using it. Greg was having some problems and wanted some slant boards, so I just dropped off a set to him to take to Andorra. So hopefully you'll see the World Superbike and MotoGP boys using them, because they all sort of train at the same gym. So that for me is fun, and maybe when I'm old and my hair starts to go, maybe I'll get into it full time.
There we go. There we go. Yeah. I use golf as my distraction and my little boy now. So yeah, I don't have much time to have
There you
side
go.
projects like that. But no, Alan, that was so fascinating. Thanks for the insights. Like, to hear what it's like to take Gracie to the top of the hill before she drops in. I mean, that's fascinating, and as well as the good, the bad, the ugly, the struggles. Like,
Yeah.
the men are capable, but sometimes just momentum is not on your side, and little outside influences. I mean, the greats like Greg have had bad starts to seasons. Like, these things happen. So yeah, thanks so much. So definitely follow Alan Milway along on Instagram and the Norco team, as well as Milway Performance. And yeah, till the next one, everybody, peace out and enjoy.
Thank you.
Thanks very much to Crank Brothers. This was the Crank Brothers Race Review Series. Myself and a selected co-host will break down each and every World Cup this season. Now, Crank Brothers is synonymous with the DH racing circuit. Last year, they celebrated 14 years in a row of Elite World Champs wins in that mallet DH pedal. They've also won the 2024 World Cup overall title on the pedal. And it's not just pedals. They've been offering to their product offering, and they have a whole host of race winners and podium contenders in their shoes. Riders like Ronan Dunn, Andy Cole, Bernard Kerr, Ocean O'Callaghan, Lucas Shaw, Cammy Belange, and Troy Brosnan, plus Benoit Coulange, just to name a few. Now, in other exciting news, Commensal Muckhoff will be running the Crank Brothers wheels this season. Now, if you know me, I am personally blown away by the shoe and pedal combo. I love them. I picked the Boa Mallet shoe at the moment. It's easy the best shoe I have ridden.